And how's it going, everybody? You know who it is. My name is Sun Woo, and today I'm gonna show you how to use the OPZ's powerful sequencer to control other synthesizers such as the Korg Monologue using MIDI CC messages. So if you're interested in that, stick with me and let's get right into it. Alright, so what is MIDI CC? MIDI CC stands for Continuous Controller, and what it means in plain language is that you can turn a knob on this synthesizer here and it will automatically internally turn a knob on this synthesizer. How this works is each of these knobs here have a CC value assigned to them. For example, this could be CC number 36, this could be CC number 37, and all we gotta do is tell the OPZ to, say, assign this encoder right here to CC number 36, and if I then turn it, it will send a MIDI CC signal through the MIDI out into the MIDI in of the monologue, and will then turn this knob automatically. Of course, the knob will not really turn, but internally the value for it will change. Easy as that. And why would you use these MIDI CC messages, you might be asking yourself. Well, for example, if you have a lot of outboard gear, say you have 4 synthesizers and 4 drum machines, you could control them all from one device like the OPZ and wouldn't have to grab over there to twist the knob, grab over there to twist the knob, but you could do it all from the OPZ itself and also sequence it all from the OPZ via the step sequencer. So you could have basically one external device for each of the 16 tracks connected and control them all with this step sequencer, which is very powerful. And you can even use the parameter locks and some step components as well as punch-in effects on your external devices, which is crazy powerful. So without further talking, let's get right into it. Okay, now how do we set this up? First of all, we gotta make sure these devices are talking to each other. We've got the MIDI out from the OPZ connected to the MIDI in of the monologue and the MIDI in of the OPZ to the MIDI out of the monologue. And now we gotta set them to the correct channel. So here I can go to my edit. It's set to MIDI channel 1, as you can see. And on the OPZ, we can also do this, and we can do this by holding the screen button and triple pressing the metronome button. All right. And here you see I got the MIDI setup open in the app right now. All right. You can also do this without the app. As you see, number 3 is lit up, which corresponds to MIDI out enabled. So that's all you gotta have enabled is MIDI out, at least for this little exercise here. The other options, of course, are also accessible via the number buttons. And now we also gotta set up the MIDI channel on which the OPZ is sending when you are on the bass track. So I'm on the bass track right now and I want to send to MIDI channel number 1 in order to address the Korg monologue. I can either do it this way by just going to 1, or the screenless version, which is holding down the shift button and holding down the track button you want to change the MIDI channel number of, in this case the bass line. All right, and now you see this is flashing, which means I'm sending on channel 1. So if I wanted channel 2, I would press here, channel 3 here, and so on and so forth. All right, so we set the monologue to MIDI channel 1. We set the OPZ's bassline channel to MIDI channel number 1. Now let's hear what happens. You might be able to notice that there are 2 different synthesizers playing. That's because we can hear the internal synth from the OPZ and the monologue playing at the same time, but I don't want to hear the baseline synth from the OPZ. So what I do is I hold the mixer button, press Shift, and now hit the baseline track. And now we can only hear the monologue. So the baseline track is not sending audio anymore, but the MIDI messages are still being sent. That's exactly what we want. All right, and now you might ask yourself, Mr. Wu, where are those MIDI CC messages? Well, we're going to get right into that. Again, we're going to go into the MIDI menu by holding down screen and triple pressing the metronome button. And we got our MIDI setup right here open. This MIDI CC assignment can only be done through the app, so sorry to you guys who don't use the app. And as you can see right here, it says CC1, CC2, CC3, and so on. So we got 16 CC messages that we can save and use on each track, and they can be different for each track as well. So you can go crazy, baby. You can also set different tracks on the OPZ to the same MIDI channel and have different CCs, so you can have, say, 32 MIDI CC messages for the same instrument and just go crazy. Alright, so let's go about assigning our MIDI CC values. I like to assign them in a logical way, meaning I assign them as the values are usually on the OPZ tracks as well, meaning that on parameter page, on the yellow encoder, I would have my filter cutoff frequency. On the red one, I would have the resonance. And on the green page, I would have my envelopes. You get what I mean. So that's what we're going to do right now. I'm going to start with the filter cutoff frequency, which in the Korg Monologues case is MIDI CC 43. So we click right here. This is where I want my filter cutoff to be. And then we use the touchpad to get to number 43. All right. And the resonance is 44. So we do this as well. I'm probably going to skip through a lot of this, but now we go to our envelope. Attack 16, decay 17. Now we don't have sustain and release on the monologue, so I will use the envelope intensity on this encoder right there, which is 25. And also we can put the target of the envelope generator, which is displayed here. So I'm gonna put that right there. All right, so how do we use these MIDI CC parameters now? Well, first of all, let's make a little bassline melody thingy. And let's hear it. So what you can basically do now is you could live record parameter changes like this. Let's get this one out first again. Or you can parameter lock these per step. So let's start doing that. All right, let's get crazy. Let's test out the envelopes a little bit. This is the type of envelope target. Or the type of envelope. This is the intensity of the envelope. Maybe let's filter it a little bit. A little bit too intense. Now check this out. If I change the octave of my second oscillator here, as you can see, just a little bit of resonance changed here. Now what else can we change? What did we have right here? I gotta remember. That's the VCO shape. And of course, the more different parameters you put on steps, you can have totally different sounds on each step. For example, you could in one pattern have the sound like this, switch to the next pattern and have a completely different sound from the monologue. Now let's put an LFO on here. Here we can choose the destination of our LFO. Of course, it's a little bit difficult to see because you have 3 destinations here, but you have many more destinations on the OPZ, but one can play around and test out things. Let's make this one longer. This one too. Now let's add some drums quickly. Alright, but the fun's not over yet. We can also use a step component to change our MIDI CC messages to another synthesizer, more specifically the sweep step component. What the sweep step component does is basically initiate either a filter sweep up and down, a filter sweep down and up, change a synthesizer parameter up and down or down and up, or panning that instrument. But not only does it sweep the internal parameters, it also sweeps the corresponding encoder and its MIDI CC message. Meaning that if I do a filter sweep, it will sweep the yellow encoder on the first parameter page with the white LEDs. If I do a panning sweep, it will sweep the yellow encoder on the fourth parameter page with the yellow LEDs. And if I sweep the synth up and down options, it will sweep the green encoder on our white parameter page. Meaning we can sweep all kinds of things with this step component. So let's do this in practice now. This is our pattern again. So let's do this in practice. This is our pattern. Now let's say we want to sweep our filter first of all. We do this one and select number 1, which is filter up. All right, let's test another thing, sweep, and let's sweep synth up and down, which means sweeping this parameter, which right now is assigned to our drive on the monologue. So let's select this one. All right, let's test the last option, which is our panning. And this should be assigned to VCO number 1's level. So I'm going to lower VCO number 2 so we can hear what's going on. So as you can see, you can do very crazy things with that. Maybe assign it to more drastic parameters. Maybe let's set this MIDI CC here to our wave type. That could be interesting. Just a second. So now I assigned my pan basically to the wave of the first oscillator. So if I sweep that now, it should go through the different wave types. Let's check that out. All right. Yeah, that's some great functionality. As you can see, you can go crazy with your devices with this. But this still is not all. Now we get to our punch-in effects, and that's where things get even more interesting. All right, so I'll just turn my VCOs up. Let's test out some of our punch-in effects, which affect a lot of our internal synth parameters, but they also do affect the corresponding encoders, meaning the MIDI CC messages that are assigned to those encoders as well. Yes, you heard right. So you can basically use the punch-in effects on all your external gear, and you can guess yourself how crazy that is. Yeah, let's just do it. All right, let's go through the punch-in effects one by one. First of all, step component number 1 is the duck step component, which turns down the volume of our synthesizer tracks to 0, meaning it turns down the red encoder on our 4th parameter page. In this case, this should turn down the volume of VCO number 2. Let's hear it. Okay, I don't know why the VCO didn't return, but in theory, it turns down the red encoder on the 4th parameter page. All right, next step component is our filter sweep step component. Since we assigned the filter and cutoff on the monologue same as we do have it here, it should do about the same thing. Okay, next one are the 2 loop effects right here. These actually don't affect the encoders, so they stay the same anyway because they just repeat the pattern. Next one is the stereo effect, which pans our instrument left and right in the OPZ. In this case, I have assigned VCO level 1 to that specific encoder, so it should make that one go up and down. Let's hear it. All right, wonderful. And the next one is the pitch down step component. Should do the same thing. The next one is the echo component. I think that affects the filter frequency as well as replaying some part of the pattern. So yeah, it should affect the MIDI CC that the yellow encoder on the first page sends. All right, let's move on. And let's check out the 2 fill effects. And next up is the short punch-in effect, which shortens our sound using the attack decay envelope. Let's try it out. That one works quite well. And next one, the long step component that should make our sound longer. Let's see if that one works. Well, that one doesn't really work, but that's all right. And last but not least, the random step component. All right, as you can see, the MIDI CC messages are strong in this one. 16 messages per track, 16 tracks overall. That even wins out over competitors like the Electron, Digitakt and Digitone, which I believe have 8 MIDI CC messages per track, and I think they have 8 MIDI tracks each, but I'm not sure about that. Yeah, so what else can I say? Hope you learned something. Thank you very much for watching. If you enjoyed the video, leave me a like, comment down below, subscribe to the channel for more videos and ring the bell. If you want to support me, check my Patreon, Ko-fi down in the description. And now let's mangle this pattern a little more, and I hope to see you next week. Peace. Yeah, sounds terrible, but you get an idea of the abilities and capabilities. See you next week. Peace.